I was 28, covered in grease, and totally in my element when I first heard those words that would haunt me for years. My father stood in the doorway of our garage, his accountant suit perfectly pressed, staring at my motorcycle parts with pure disdain. "Your motorcycle will not pay the bills, Ezekiel," he scoffed, shaking his head. I kept working, pretending his words did not cut deep. Little did he know, those same motorcycles he mocked would change everything. My brother Jackson saw it before anyone else. Before I reveal how my father's jaw dropped when he discovered what my useless hobby really meant, drop a comment telling me where you are watching from, and hit that subscribe button if you have ever had someone underestimate your passion. Growing up in our middle-class Portland neighborhood, I always felt the weight of expectations on my shoulders. I was 28, covered in grease, and totally in my element when I first heard those words that would haunt me for years. My father stood in the doorway of our garage, his accountant suit perfectly pressed, staring at my motorcycle parts with pure disdain. "Your motorcycle will not pay the bills, Ezekiel," he scoffed, shaking his head. I kept working, pretending his words did not cut deep. Little did he know, those same motorcycles he mocked would change everything. Her smile could diffuse any argument, and she always found ways to encourage my interests without directly contradicting my father. That delicate balance worked for our family until I turned 16 when cancer took her from us in just 8 months. Her absence left a gaping hole that somehow made the house both emptier and more suffocating at the same time. My younger brother Jackson was 4 years behind me, but miles ahead in winning our father's approval. He brought home perfect report cards, captained the debate team, and seemed to absorb our father's worldview like a sponge. I never resented him for it. Jackson was genuinely brilliant and hardworking, but the constant comparisons became another burden to bear. My fascination with motorcycles started when I was 12. There was something about the mechanical harmony, the raw power contained in those machines that spoke to me on a level nothing in school ever could. My brother Jackson saw it before anyone else. Before I reveal how my father's jaw dropped when he discovered what my useless hobby really meant, drop a comment telling me where you are watching from, and hit that subscribe button if you have ever had someone underestimate your passion. Growing up in our middle-class Portland neighborhood, I always felt the weight of expectations on my shoulders. I would spend hours at the library, reading motorcycle magazines, sketching designs, and learning everything I could about engines and custom builds. When other kids had posters of bands or movie stars, my walls were covered with vintage Harleys and Triumphs. My father saw my interest as a phase at first, something I would grow out of when faced with real responsibilities. He would walk past my room, glance at my sketches, and mutter something about childish daydreams. He brought home perfect report cards, captained the debate team, and seemed to absorb our father's worldview like a sponge. I never resented him for it. Jackson was genuinely brilliant and hardworking, but the constant comparisons became another burden to bear. My fascination with motorcycles started when I was 12. There was something about the mechanical harmony, the raw power contained in those machines that spoke to me on a level nothing in school ever could. When we returned, my cheeks hurt from smiling so much. "That boy is going to break his neck on one of those death traps," my father said to Uncle Ryan, making no effort to keep his voice down as I stood right there. "Or he might find his calling," my uncle countered. "You never know what sparks a person's passion, Thomas," my father scoffed. "Passions do not pay mortgages." My mother placed her hand on my shoulder and whispered, "Ignore him." In the mornings, I dragged myself through business classes, struggling to stay awake through discussions of market analytics and corporate structures. My grades slipped from mediocre to concerning, but evenings and weekends at the shop became my real education. Every broken bike that came through those doors was a puzzle to solve, a challenge that lit up my mind in ways differential equations never could. The inevitable confrontation came during Thanksgiving break of my junior year. I would spend hours at the library, reading motorcycle magazines, sketching designs, and learning everything I could about engines and custom builds. When other kids had posters of bands or movie stars, my walls were covered with vintage Harleys and Triumphs. My father saw my interest as a phase at first, something I would grow out of when faced with real responsibilities. He would walk past my room, glance at my sketches, and mutter something about childish daydreams. My mother had been gone for nearly 2 years, and the house had become a Cold War zone, where maintaining peace seemed more important than pursuing truth. So, I enrolled at Portland State University's business program just as he wanted, but 2 weeks into my first semester, I secretly applied for a part-time job at Morrison Motorcycles, a repair shop 15 minutes from campus. The owner, a gruff man named Frank with tattoos running up both arms, hired me on the spot after I diagnosed an ignition issue on a Kawasaki he had been struggling with all morning. "Kid, you got the touch," he said, watching me work. Some people study engines their whole lives and never develop that instinct. For the next 2 years, I lived a double life. In the mornings, I dragged myself through business classes, struggling to stay awake through discussions of market analytics and corporate structures. My grades slipped from mediocre to concerning, but evenings and weekends at the shop became my real education. Every broken bike that came through those doors was a puzzle to solve, a challenge that lit up my mind in ways differential equations never could. The inevitable confrontation came during Thanksgiving break of my junior year. My father had received a warning letter from the university about my academic standing. "What exactly do you plan to do with a business degree you barely earned?" he demanded, waving the letter in my face across the dinner table. "No respectable firm will hire someone with these grades." "Maybe I do not want to work for a respectable firm," I muttered. "What was that I said? Maybe that is not the path I want." His face reddened. "The path you want. And what path is that, tinkering with motorcycles until your back gives out, at 40, living paycheck to paycheck? Is that the path you want?" "It might be," I said, finding courage from somewhere. "At least I would be happy." He laughed, not his real laugh, but the sharp, dismissive one he reserved for ideas he found particularly absurd. "Happy does not pay the bills, Ezekiel. Your motorcycle hobby will not pay the bills. Grow up and face reality." The argument escalated until he delivered his ultimatum: improve my grades and commit to the path he had chosen, or lose his financial support entirely. Looking back, I think he expected me to back down, to fall in line like I always had before. Instead, I packed my things that night and moved into a tiny apartment above a laundromat near the motorcycle shop. Frank increased my hours to full-time, and I arranged my remaining classes in the mornings. My relationship with my father deteriorated to occasional cold phone calls, usually initiated by Jackson, trying to keep our family from fracturing completely. The next 2 years were the hardest of my life. I worked 60-hour weeks at the shop, while finishing my business degree with the minimum passing grades. My apartment was barely big enough for a mattress and a desk. I ate ramen most nights, and sold my car to cover tuition one semester when my student loan was delayed. But despite the hardship, or perhaps because of it, I discovered a resilience I never knew I possessed. On my graduation day, 2 people showed up: Frank from the shop and Jackson, who had just finished his freshman year at an Ivy League school back east. My father claimed an important client meeting kept him away, but we all knew the truth. "He is proud of you in his way," Jackson said, as we celebrated over cheap beer afterward. "He just does not know how to show it." I laughed. My relationship with my father deteriorated to occasional cold phone calls, usually initiated by Jackson, trying to keep our family from fracturing completely. The next 2 years were the hardest of my life. I worked 60-hour weeks at the shop, while finishing my business degree with the minimum passing grades. My apartment was barely big enough for a mattress and a desk. I ate ramen most nights, and sold my car to cover tuition one semester when my student loan was delayed. "I saw your face when you came back. That was pure joy, Ezekiel. Never lose sight of what brings you joy." For the next 3 years, my mother quietly enabled my growing obsession. She would drive me to motorcycle shows when my father was working weekends. She found used repair manuals at garage sales. On my 15th birthday, she gave me a small toolbox with specialized wrenches for motorcycle maintenance, hidden in my closet where my father would not see it. That summer, I earned my official motorcycle repair certification and began experimenting more boldly with custom designs. Frank gave me space in the back of the shop to work on personal projects after hours. I developed a style that married vintage aesthetics with modern performance enhancements, classic looks with cutting-edge function. I started documenting my builds on Instagram more as a personal portfolio than anything else. Commissions started coming in more than I could possibly handle, while still working my day job at Frank's shop. I was riding this unexpected wave of attention when Jackson convinced me to attend a family dinner celebrating his prestigious summer internship at a consulting firm. I agreed, feeling confident enough in my recent success to face my father again. That confidence evaporated quickly. My father spent the entire meal praising Jackson's accomplishments and career trajectory while barely acknowledging my presence. When I finally mentioned my custom build for the musician, my father dismissed it with a wave. "Lucky break," he said. "Celebrities and their impulse purchases. That is not a sustainable business model, Ezekiel." I left early, the food turning to ash in my mouth. The drive home became a blur through unexpected tears. Why did his approval still matter so much? Why could I not just be content with the validation from actual clients who valued my work? 2 weeks later, Frank called me into his office, an unusual formality for our normally casual workplace. "I am getting older, Zeke," he said, using the nickname only he used. "Been thinking about the future of this place." He pushed a folder across his cluttered desk. It became my creative outlet, a way to showcase the art I saw in these machines. The turning point came unexpectedly. A minor rock star spotted my Instagram page and commissioned me to build him a custom bike for his upcoming tour. When he posted the finished product to his 2 million followers, my phone did not stop buzzing for 3 days. Suddenly, my account went from a few hundred followers to over 50,000. I took the plunge, securing a loan against my grandfather's old Triumph that I had painstakingly restored, the only thing of real value I owned. For the next year, I worked 16-hour days building our brand one custom motorcycle at a time. The name Phoenix Customs came from the idea of bringing old bikes back to life, transformed and more beautiful than before. Each build was photographed professionally and added to our growing social media presence. The motorcycle community started to take notice. Blogs featured our work. Small local shows invited us to display. Our waiting list for custom builds grew from weeks to months. Jackson started visiting the shop during his school breaks, impressed by what his big brother was building. I could see the conflict in him, genuine admiration for my work, mixed with the ingrained desire to follow our father's carefully laid path. "He still asks about you," Jackson said during one visit, watching me hand pinstripe a fuel tank. "He would never admit it, but he keeps your Instagram page bookmarked on his computer." I snorted. "Probably looking for signs of my inevitable failure." Jackson shook his head. "I do not think so. I think he is confused. You were supposed to crash and burn without his guidance, but instead, you are flying." I changed the subject. Some wounds were still too fresh to probe. My father's 60th birthday became an unintentional breaking point. Jackson insisted I attend the small gathering at our childhood home, promising that enough time had passed for tensions to ease. Against my better judgment, I agreed. For the first hour, things remained civil, if uncomfortable. Then came the toast, where my father thanked everyone for coming, expressed his pride in Jackson's recent job offer from a prestigious consulting firm, and managed to completely ignore my existence despite me sitting 10 feet away. When dessert was served, he finally acknowledged me, with the conversational equivalent of a knife twist. "So Ezekiel still playing with motorcycle parts?" When are you going to use that degree I paid for and get a real career like your brother?" The room fell silent. Every eye turned to me. "I have a real career," I said quietly. "A successful one." He laughed that dismissive laugh again. "Successful? Is that what you call it? Covered in grease. Wasting your potential on this grease monkey work. Your brother is being courted by Fortune 500 companies, while you are changing oil for weekend hobbyists." I stood up chair, scraping loudly against hardwood. "Thank you for the lovely birthday celebration," I said, voice tight. "I will not waste any more of your time with my disappointing existence." I left heart pounding in my chest, resolving to never subject myself to his judgment again. To my surprise, Jackson followed me out to the driveway. "You cannot keep doing this," he said, grabbing my arm. "One of you has to be the bigger person." "I have tried for years," I shot back. "Nothing I do will ever be good enough." Jackson's face hardened unexpectedly. "You think I have it easy, being the golden child. Do you know what it is? Like living with the expectation of perfection every day. At least you get his approval that is conditional on never making a single mistake, on following his blank exact blueprint for my life. I am suffocating Ezekiel. Every day I watch you building something you love while I am just building the life someone else designed for me." We stood there in the driveway, two brothers, seeing each other clearly for perhaps the first time. His revelation hung between us, changing everything I thought I understood about our family dynamic. "What do you want, Jackson?" I finally asked. "I do not know yet," he admitted. "But watching you follow your passion makes me brave enough to start figuring it out." 2 months after that confrontation, everything changed again. A major motorcycle magazine featured Phoenix Customs in their annual Builders to Watch issue with a 6-page spread of my designs. The online version went viral in the motorcycle world. My phone rang constantly with interview requests and potential clients. Then came the call I never expected. Brunswick Motors, one of the largest motorcycle manufacturers in the country, wanted to discuss a collaboration. They were interested in my signature style for a limited edition series, 10 custom bikes, with my design, their manufacturing capabilities, and a price tag with multiple zeros. The contract they offered would bring in more money than 5 years at any entry-level corporate position my father could have envisioned for me. We expanded operations overnight, moving to a larger facility and hiring 3 additional mechanics to handle the regular repair work while I focused on design. I was in the middle of finalizing the Brunswick designs when Jackson showed up unannounced at the shop. His expression told me something was wrong before he spoke. "You need to know something," he said, closing my office door behind him. "Dad is in trouble." For the first time, Jackson revealed what had been happening in the parts of our family life I had disconnected from. Our father's accounting firm had made several bad investments on behalf of clients. Lawsuits were pending. The family business, built over 30 years, was on the verge of bankruptcy. Our father was too proud to ask for help or even admit the severity of the situation. "He does not know I am here," Jackson said. "He would be furious if he knew I was telling you this. But I cannot watch our family self-destruct from pride." I sat back in my chair, conflicted emotions washing over me. Part of me, a part I was not proud of, felt a twisted satisfaction. The great Thomas Wells, who had dismissed my choices so thoroughly, was facing the collapse of everything he had built. The cosmic irony was almost too perfect. But beneath that petty reaction lay something more complicated. Despite everything, he was still my father, and Jackson, caught in the middle, was suffering. "What do you want me to do?" I asked. Jackson looked me straight in the eyes. "Just talk to him, one more time." Walking into my childhood home, after so many years of minimal contact, felt like stepping into a time capsule. Everything looked the same, yet somehow smaller than in my memories. My father sat at the kitchen table, papers spread before him, looking older than his 60 years. His hair had gone completely gray. He looked up, surprise, briefly crossing his face, before his expression hardened into the familiar mask of disapproval. "Jackson should not have called you," he said by way of greeting. "He is worried about you," I replied, remaining standing. "About the business. My business is not your concern. I have handled my affairs for decades without your input." And just like that, we were back to our old patterns. His defensiveness, my frustration, the unbridgeable gap between us. "I did not come here to fight," I said, even as anger bubbled up inside me. "I came because despite everything you are still my father, a father you turned your back on to pursue your hobby." Something snapped inside me. Years of accumulated hurt burst forth in a torrent of words. "A hobby? Is that what you think this is? I built a business from nothing, no support, no encouragement, nothing but your constant judgment and dismissal. I worked 16-hour days, took risks, built something real and valuable while you were busy planning how I should live my life instead of respecting the person I actually am." He stood up, color rising in his face. "Respect. You want to talk about respect? I tried to give you a stable future to protect you from." The front door opened, interrupting whatever revelation might have followed. Jackson entered, eyes widening at the obvious tension. "You are both here." "Good," he said, setting his backpack on the counter with deliberate calmness. Then he did something completely unexpected. He pulled out the latest issue of Custom Motorcycle, quarterly, with my face on the cover. "Dad, have you seen this?" he asked, placing it on the table. "Or this," he added, printouts of news articles about the Brunswick Motors collaboration. "Or maybe this financial statement showing Ezekiel's business valuation." Our father stared at the documents, confusion giving way to disbelief as he processed the numbers. "This cannot be right," he muttered, looking closer at the Brunswick contract terms. "It is all real," Jackson said firmly. "While you have been dismissing him as playing with bikes, Ezekiel has built a 7-figure business doing what he loves. His waitlist for custom builds is 18 months long. He employs 7 people. The motorcycle he designed for that rock star whim just sold at auction for more than your car is worth." I stood frozen, watching my father's worldview visibly crumbling as Jackson continued his methodical dismantling of every assumption our father had made about my career choices. The silence that followed was deafening. My father sank back into his chair, staring at the evidence of my success spread across his kitchen table. I watched a complex sequence of emotions cross his face: disbelief, confusion, and something that might have been shame. I should have felt vindicated. This moment, my father finally seeing the value of the path I had chosen, should have been satisfying. Instead, I felt a strange emptiness. His recognition, which I had craved for so long, suddenly seemed less important than it once had. I turned to leave the conversation feeling complete, without any words actually exchanged. "Ezekiel, wait," my father said, his voice lacking its usual authoritative edge. "Please." I paused at the door, not yet turning around. "I never told you about my father, your grandfather," he continued. "My father was a dreamer too. He opened a restaurant when I was young, put everything we had into it. His passion, his dream." He paused, voice growing quieter. "It failed spectacularly within 2 years. We lost our house. My mother worked 2 jobs. I watched my father break under the weight of his collapsed dream. I turned slowly, seeing vulnerability in my father's face for perhaps the first time in my life. "I swore I would never let that happen to my family," he said. "When you showed interest in something so uncertain, so reminiscent of his passion project," his voice trailed off. "You were trying to protect me. I finished for him." He nodded, eyes dropping to the magazine cover with my photo. "I was wrong about your abilities." Clearly. A weak attempt at a smile flickered across his face. "Your mother would have known better. She always saw what made you special." Jackson stood silently beside me, the diplomatic bridge between 2 stubborn men who had forgotten how to speak to each other. "We should go," I said eventually. "Think about what you want to do about your business situation. I might have some ideas if you are interested in hearing them." The offer hung in the air, not quite forgiveness, but a potential path forward. 2 weeks later, my father visited Phoenix Customs for the first time. I watched him take in the scale of the operation, the workshop where 3 builds were simultaneously in progress, the design studio with digital renderings on large monitors, the wall of press clippings and awards the business had accumulated. "This is all yours," he asked, genuine amazement in his voice. "Built from scratch," I confirmed. The business degree helped more than I expected, though not in the way you planned. After touring the facility, we sat in my office and discussed his financial situation. I outlined a proposal, a business loan, from me to him, structured with fair but strict terms. He would maintain control of his accounting firm, but would need to implement significant changes to its investment strategies and client management protocols. His pride warred visibly with practicality as he reviewed the paperwork. "This is a good deal," he finally admitted. "Better than I deserve." "It is not about what you deserve," I said. "It is about what makes sense. Your firm still has value and reputation. With proper restructuring, it can recover." He signed the papers, and just like that, our relationship shifted into something entirely new. A professional connection built on mutual respect that might, with time, heal our personal one as well. Jackson took on the role of family mediator, organizing dinners, where conversation gradually became less strained. My father began asking genuine questions about my business decisions. I found myself curious about his expertise in areas where our professional worlds overlapped. 6 months later, my father arrived at the shop unannounced. He stood awkwardly in the doorway of my office, watching me finalize designs for the next Brunswick collaboration. "I brought lunch," he said, holding up a bag from my favorite deli. "If you have time." Over sandwiches, he cleared his throat several times before finally speaking. "You have built something impressive here, Ezekiel. The way you manage your team, your vision for designs, the business model, it is exceptional work." Coming from him, these simple words carried enormous weight. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. "I wonder," he continued hesitantly, "if you might be willing to look at the new client management system I am implementing. You seem to have a good handle on balancing creative work with business operations." It was the first time he had ever asked for my professional input, a monumental shift from the man who once dismissed my entire career as a hobby. "Sure," I agreed. "I can stop by your office next week." Our collaboration on restructuring his business became a bridge to rebuilding our relationship. We found common ground in unexpected places. His methodical approach to problem solving complemented my creative thinking in ways neither of us anticipated. During this period, I began therapy sessions to process the years of disapproval and the complicated emotions that came with our evolving relationship. I learned to set boundaries, to value my achievements without needing external validation, and to understand the generational trauma that had shaped my father's rigid worldview. Jackson made his own brave decision, stepping away from the consulting position to pursue graduate studies in environmental science, his true passion. Our father surprisingly supported his choice. One successful entrepreneur in the family taught me something he told Jackson: "There are many paths to a fulfilling life." I met Audrey, an architectural designer who appreciated my aesthetic sense and challenged me to expand my creative boundaries. She became my partner in both life and occasionally in design, bringing fresh perspective to my work. The business continued to grow. We launched a small production line of Phoenix Customs branded accessories. I maintained a hand in every design while building a team that shared my vision. Finding the balance between expansion and staying true to the passion that started it all became my new challenge. 1 year after that fateful kitchen confrontation, we gathered for dinner at my new house, a renovated industrial space with a workshop built into the ground floor. My father arrived early, bringing an old photo album I had never seen before. "Your mother kept these," he explained, opening to pictures of a young boy on a toy motorcycle beaming with joy. "She always knew who you were meant to be." As we looked through photos of my childhood, many featuring the early signs of my passion that he had overlooked, he said something I never expected to hear. "I was wrong, Ezekiel. About all of it. Your motorcycle did pay the bills, and then some." A smile crossed his face, genuine and warm. "More importantly, it brought you fulfillment no accounting job ever could have." That simple acknowledgement healed something deep within me. Why did his approval still matter so much? Why could I not just be content with the validation from actual clients who valued my work? 2 weeks later, Frank called me into his office, an unusual formality for our normally casual workplace. "I am getting older, Zeke," he said, using the nickname only he used. "Been thinking about the future of this place." He pushed a folder across his cluttered desk. "Success is not measured by someone else's ledger, but by waking up each day eager to continue the work you love. If there is one thing I learned from all of this, it is that validation must come from within. The moment I stopped seeking my father's approval and started building something I believed in was the moment everything changed." True freedom comes not from rebellion, but from authenticity, having the courage to be exactly who you are meant to be. Do you have a passion others have dismissed? How did you find the strength to pursue it anyway? Share your story in the comments below. If this journey resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real-life experiences about following your authentic path. And if you know someone struggling to believe in their own vision, share this video with them. Sometimes we all need a reminder that the road less traveled can lead to the most beautiful destinations. Thank you for listening, and remember, the most powerful engine in your life is the passion that drives you forward.